Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Adam Lemerise, and with me, as always, is Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. Please feel free to leave your questions and comments in the chat below, and we'll be happy to answer them on the show. On tonight's show, we discussed the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series schedule. Matt White is here with his Grid World Motorsport League update. Talks about Formula One driver development programs, and the legendary Bathurst 1000 gets a brand new date. But Kobe, let's tell our viewers some really big news that came from NASCAR.
Thank you, Adam. And with that said, some really big news dropped from NASCAR today, with them officially unveiling the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series schedule. I'm going to display it right here on the screen for you all to see. Last week, GRIDnet discussed the report from the Athletics' Jordan Bianchi about the potential of NASCAR moving the Busch Clash exhibition race from Daytona to a special-built short track at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. As you can see on the official schedule, is confirmed now, NASCAR goes Hollywood to kick off the 2022 season and the debut of the highly anticipated next-gen car. There's some mixed reactions to the LA Coliseum short track race. Brad Keselowski, who's going to be driving for Roush Fenway racing next year in that number 6 Ford Mustang, said the sports atmosphere will be incredible, especially with NASCAR racing in LA the week before the Super Bowl takes place right down the road in Inglewood. And for those of you who used to play the old EA Sports NASCAR games on PS2, this race might give you some old Dodge Raceway Stadium vibes. Adam, is a short track race in the LA market better than keeping the Busch Clash at Daytona or scrapping the exhibition race altogether?
Oh, I love this idea of NASCAR goes Hollywood. You know, last night on FS1's NASCAR Race Hub, they Jamie McMurray, Clint Boyer, and Tyler Reddick were in their sim, basically doing some virtual laps of what the stadium would look like thanks to iRacing. And from what I watched and heard from them, they said it's going to be awesome, fantastic. And, you know, to give the fans some perspective about the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, it has hosted motorsports events in the past. The now gone Mickey Thompson Off-Road Championship Series used to compete there, and that's how NASCAR legend Jimmy Johnson got his start racing in those trophy trucks alongside greats like Walker Evans, Ivan the Iron Stewart, and Rod Millen. The AMA Supercross Series has raced there as well, and also Robbie Gordon's Stadium Super Trucks. So it's not crazy to see motorsports there. And also, if we NASCAR fans, don't forget legendary Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. They have NASCAR races there, and inside there is where the Winston-Salem State University football team has its home games. So it's not crazy to see NASCAR go to a stadium. All the fans in SoCal are going to love it, and all the fans worldwide are going to go absolutely crazy. NASCAR goes Hollywood. Who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought NASCAR would ever go Hollywood? I'm really glad you brought up the Bowman Gray comparison, because that's what I've been seeing some people talk about on Twitter. And yes, some people can say NASCAR should have just went to the Cup Series, should have just held the Clash at Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem. But the thing is, yes, that market is very important to NASCAR's roots. But basically what you can do is take a Bowman Gray and put it in a large market like LA, and basically that's exactly what you're probably going to get. I think it's going to be a really crazy race at the LA short track inside the LA Memorial Coliseum there. I think it's going to be quite a show, and we don't know for sure if it's going to work or not, but NASCAR's taking a big risk here. And I really think that the potential of this greatly outweighs the downside, because you can certainly introduce NASCAR to a brand new audience by bringing them to LA. And plus, if you were thinking about going to the Super Bowl, which is going to be right down the road in Inglewood, you could plan a 2-week vacation. Go to NASCAR go to the NASCAR race at the LA Coliseum on the 6th, and then week later, the Super Bowl. And if you're feeling really lucky, then travel on to Florida to go to the Daytona 500. I think those 3 weeks in sports is going to be absolutely incredible. And one of the biggest complaints about the 2022 schedule is the lack of off weekends. NASCAR is on the road 38 weeks out of the year, 36 points races, then the Busch Clash and the All-Star races exhibitions. Next year, there's only a single off weekend for the entire industry in June after the road course race at Sonoma. And this year, a lot of people were able to relax and have a little fun, a lot of downtime during the 2 week break for NBC Sports coverage of the Summer Olympics. Unfortunately, next year, that's not going to happen. Everybody will be on the constant go. Also, you have to look at that brutal travel at the very beginning of the season, traveling all the way from North Carolina to Los Angeles for the Busch Clash, then traveling back to Florida for the Daytona 500, and then after you finish Daytona, you got to get back on the road and go back to California for Fontana. So that is going to be a brutal stretch for all the hollow drivers and everybody in the NASCAR industry. And through and with this single off weekend during the regular season, Adam, do you think next year's schedule could lead to a lot of burnout throughout the NASCAR industry?
Of course, you were mentioning the hollow drivers, and for you fans that may not know, those hollow drivers do have families. So next year, it's going to be very hard for them to see their families because they'll be crisscrossing the United States, and also these NASCAR drivers, they also have families as well, and most of them do travel with them, to the races. But I feel so sorry for all those hollow drivers. It's going to be very brutal on them. I believe NASCAR should have at least 3 off weekends in 2023 to give some of these teams and drivers some time away so they can spend it with their families, because they may not get a chance these NASCAR drivers may not get a chance to see their wives and kids for a long time because of the brutal schedule for next year. Hopefully NASCAR, after next year, NASCAR does have a few more open dates in 2023.
Yes, I think a few more open dates would be really important for everyone throughout the industry. And I'm going to say something that will probably make some fans really angry, but I suggest shortening the schedule, having less races. I think if you have less races, then we can potentially get a few more off weekends in the schedule. Maybe just here and there after a stretch of races, you'll maybe let's say run 6 or 7 races, then you have an off weekend. Run 6, 7 more races, another off weekend. I think that gives the teams a chance to recharge the batteries. Or we could potentially do a 2 week summer break like we saw this year with the Olympics, like we see in Formula One, a break to recharge the batteries. Go out there, have fun, not think about racing. Then the batteries you charge, you can get back out there and get back on with the task at hand. I think a 30 week schedule would be really doable in today's climate. You still get to see a lot of racing, but I know a lot of fans out there want to see racing almost every single week, and I totally get that. We all love racing here, but you have to think about everybody who works in the industry. They have lives outside of racing. While they really love their job, there's a lot of sacrifices you have to make that comes with the job. And I know some people who work in NASCAR right now, and I can tell you they are not thrilled at all when they saw this schedule, because it's really disappointing with them. They won't be able to have as much downtime outside of work. And next year, I'm really hoping that if anyone gets burnt out, that they're able to focus on themselves and look into some potential self-care things, because that's going to be really important, especially with one off weekend. And looking at some other notable things on the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series schedule, Coda's road course race getting a do-over after that wacky rain race we saw in May, and the race is going to be moving from May, as you can see on the schedule, to the end of March. Bristol Dirt's going to be in April, Sunday night, under the lights in prime time, just like a dirt race should be at night, not during the day. The All-Star race is going to be returning to Texas Motor Speedway, but taking place a week before the Coca-Cola 600 in the middle of June. So the All-Star race returning to its traditional date 1 week before the Coke 600. Worldwide Technology Raceway, aka Gateway, is going to get his long-awaited Cup race at the beginning of June. As a result, Pocono is going to lose a race, a major blow to all you Northeast NASCAR fans out there. Ims Road Course is returning for the second straight year, but earlier today, Jennifer from the Associated Press is reporting that we could potentially see the return of Brickyard 400 on the oval in the future. Once again, Daytona closing out the regular season and Darlington open up the playoffs, but the order of tracks will be different. Starting around the 16, you have Darlington, the Southern 500, kicking things off, and then Kansas, the second race in the playoffs. And Richmond is going to lose a playoff date and move into the regular season. The race in there at Richmond Raceway lately hasn't been really that compelling, so Richmond gets 2 regular season races, loses that playoff date. Then Bristol night race closing out the round of 16, and then round of 12, Texas Motor Speedway, Talladega, Charlotte Roval, and then round of 8 after that, Las Vegas. Homestead is back in the playoffs after being moved to the spring. Then we have Martinsville as that cutoff, and then the Championship 4 season finale at Phoenix Raceway once again. Adam, what are your final thoughts on the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series schedule?
Well, first of all, I like Bristol Dirt at night. For those fans that may not be aware, a lot of NASCAR talent you see today grew up on the local short tracks across the United States, racing on a Friday night and Saturday night. So I love Bristol at night. They're doing it Saturday night. So, and I'm glad COTA is earlier in the schedule after everything that happened this year with the crazy rain race. The All-Star race, I'm so happy to see it back where it should be, the week before the Coca-Cola 600. That's where it used to be. That's where I remember it as. And overall, this 2022 NASCAR schedule, as Larry Mack would say, reach up there and pull those belts tight one more time. Because next year we have these new next-gen cars. We've seen video of them practicing and testing at Daytona. So it should be interesting to see how everything develops with next year's NASCAR Cup Series schedule. And,
Yes, go ahead, Adam.
And all I gotta say is, bring on 2022. It's going to be a crazy ride.
Yes, it's definitely going to be a crazy ride. And sorry for interrupting you there, Adam. But overall, I think the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series schedule is certainly going to be interesting as we watch it unfold, especially as I've been alluding to, the 1 week break throughout the entire season, and then the brutal travel stretch at the beginning of the year. It's going to be interesting to see which teams and drivers are going to be able to survive such a compacted schedule with all of these races going on. And it seems like we're going to get practice and qualifying back next year, so that's going to be a lot more going on, and we'll see who's gonna survive going into the Phoenix Championship race next year. And next, here's Adam with some news coming out of the NASCAR Xfinity Series and Formula E.
Thanks, Kobe. Yesterday, it was announced that Sheldon Creed will be moving up from the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2022, racing for the legendary Richard Childress. Creed was very happy of this move. And in other Xfinity news, Justin Allgaier and sponsor Brandt will return to Junior Motorsports in 2022. In fact, Justin starts on the outside front row for Friday night's Xfinity race at Bristol Motor Speedway alongside his teammate Noah Gragson. You can catch all the action Friday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC Sports Network. And in Formula E news, Rocket Venturi Racing has announced its driver lineup for 2022. Eduardo Montara stays on. And after Audie's departure, Lucas DeGrassi comes over to be Eduardo Montara's teammate. Kobe?
And last weekend, I stayed up extremely late watching the first Formula 2 sprint race at Monza. Théo Pourchaire won that race. The 18-year-old Frenchman has a bright future in motorsports. However, it's highly unlikely he'll be in contention for Antonio Giovinazzi's Alfa Romeo Racing Formula One seat next year. Same goes for another promising young talent and current Formula 2 championship leader, Oscar Piastri. The only current Formula 2 driver who has a serious chance of moving up to Formula 1 at the moment is the Chinese driver, Guan Yu Zhou. He's currently working on securing significant financial support back home in China so he can afford the second Alfa Romeo seat alongside newcomer to the team, Valtteri Bottas's departed Mercedes. To be perfectly clear, Guan Yu Zhou is a very talented driver and he's proved that he deserves to be in Formula 1 on talent alone. Joe is an Alpine development driver. Alpine's Formula One lineup of Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso are set to continue into the future, meaning Joe will have to find a Formula One opportunity elsewhere. Piastri is also an Alpine development driver, performing extremely well in Formula 2 competition and unlikely to get the promotion to Formula 2. Pourchaire is a Sauber Academy development driver with ties out for Romeo, but they're worried about promoting the young Pourchaire to Formula 1 too soon because they fear he could potentially fail being so young and inexperienced. Another season of Formula 2, more likely, so he can get that experience. Then maybe he'll join the grid in 2023. And this story really got me thinking about those Formula One driver development programs, all of those Formula One driver academies. And I'm just asking myself a rhetorical question. Are they really helping or hurting a driver's career? And looking at the Red Bull Junior team, Yuri Vips and Liam Lawson currently represent them in Formula 2. John Deruvala does too, but it seems like his Formula One chances are much slimmer than Vips and Lawson. Alpha Tauri keeping Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda in 2022. So a Red Bull Junior will have to wait until 2023 to see if a seat opens up. The program's seen a lot of success with drivers like Carlos Sainz, Jean-Eric Vergne, Brendan Hartley, Sebastian Buemi, and Scott Speed going to the former Toro Rosso F1 team. Moving up to the big Red Bull team, we've seen Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen, and Alex Albon, to name a few. When his IndyCar career was up in the air, Pato O'Ward actually joined the Red Bull Junior team. Pato raced in Formula 2 at Austria and did several races in Japan's Super Formula Series, but he didn't have the super license points to make it to Formula 1, so Red Bull let him go to pursue another opportunity with Arrow McLaren SP and IndyCar, and as you've all seen, that worked out pretty well for Pato O'Ward. And it's clear that Pato O'Ward is an F1 caliber talent, but the stars just didn't align for him to make the leap to Formula 1 this time around. He'll test with the McLaren Formula One team at Abu Dhabi later this year, and who knows where that'll lead. George Russell's time in the Mercedes driver development program has clearly paid off with his promotion from Williams to Mercedes next year. Pascal Wehrlein got opportunities to race for Mercedes and DTM, and he made it to Formula One due to his association with the Silver Arrows. Esteban Ocon had strong ties to Mercedes, even spent a year out of Formula One in 2019 when Lance Stroll moved into the former Racing Point team, so his relationship with the Silver Arrows did nothing for Ocon that year, but at least he got to be their reserve driver. Finally, looking at the Ferrari Driver Academy, Robert Schwartzman, Marcus Armstrong represent the Scuderia in FIA Formula 2. Schwartzman is a highly rated talent, third in Formula 2 points. Doesn't look like a contender for next year at Alfa Romeo, and unfortunately, Ferrari no longer has control over that seat, which means Schwartzman and potentially Antonio Giovinazzi could be in trouble. Schwartzman, maybe we'll get to see him do another year of Formula 2 or do a year in sports car racing like current Alfa Romeo F1 reserve and Ferrari test driver Callum Ilott. And last year, Ilott finished second in the Formula 2 standings. He seemed destined to get that Formula 1 seat at Haas alongside Mick Schumacher, another Ferrari Academy driver, but Nikita Mazepin brought his own funding Haas needed to stay afloat. And with his own Formula 1 future fading, Ilott signed a contract with Juntos Hollinger Racing to compete in the final three events of the current IndyCar season, so Ilott could reset his career and focus on racing in America next. And Ilott, many consider him a driver good enough to be in Formula One, and he unfortunately might get left out of auto racing's mountaintop, the pinnacle of motorsport. Ferrari's had some high-profile drivers go through their academy program, like current driver Charles Leclerc. They've even had Sergio Perez, Lance Stroll, and the late Jules Bianchi. And another driver who didn't get a proper F1 shot, who went through the Ferrari program, is GT3 ace Raffaele Marcello. Marcello currently races Mercedes AMG GT3 cars all over the world as a factory driver, and he's considered to be one of the fastest GT3 drivers in the world. And last but not least, let's talk about a controversial Formula 2 driver. You can probably guess what I'm talking about because it's Dan Ticktum, who races for Carlin. To say the least, Ticktum's name has been in the news over the years for all the wrong reasons, from getting banned from racing an entire year for losing his temper and deliberately wrecking another competitor under a full course caution due to immaturity, to getting dropped from two driver development programs, Red Bull and Williams. In recent weeks, Ticktum was under fire for referring to current Williams F1 driver Nicholas Latifi. He called him poo, and that's probably not a smart thing to say if you want to be a Formula One driver or a driver in any major racing series. And in an article from Formula One Feeder Series, Ticktum said his 2021 season has been very mentally challenging and acknowledges his dream of becoming a Formula One driver is over. And he mentioned how political and unjust the sport can be and how the best drivers don't always make it to the pinnacle of motorsport. Ticktum took full responsibility for his actions, admitting he opened his mouth too much and said things he probably shouldn't have said. Also, he doesn't think his personality is a good fit for modern Formula One. So, Adam, does Dan Ticktum have a point here about the political and business side of the sport, especially with all the moving parts in Formula One team driver development programs?
Well, for me, first of all, I gotta say you did a really good job with the segment, Kobe. And second of all, there's so many great F2 and F3 drivers out there. They're just chomping at the bit, to get into Formula One. There's so many great racers in Formula 2 that they're looking, when some team in Formula One loses a driver and there's an open seat and they're saying, man, I'd love to get in there. But I know it's not easy to race in Formula One, but overall, the F2 and F3 programs are really good races to watch. You can watch them here in the United States on ESPN Plus in the mornings. On the weekends that Formula One is on. So overall, the F2 and F3 series are really fun to watch, and I have so much respect for those drivers. So hopefully one day we'll see some of these great F2 and F3 drivers compete in Formula One.
Yes, and unfortunately, there's so many of those talented young drivers. There's not going to be room for everyone. As we see, there's only 20 seats in Formula One, and I think Dan Ticktum is right when he's alluding to that the top 20 the 20 only Formula One drivers are not the top 20 best drivers in the world. I think some of them certainly are, but not all of them are the best drivers in the world, and it's really unfortunate. We know it's a pay to play sport, and if you don't have the funding, you're not going to be able to race. And the big tragedy when thinking about Dan Ticktum in particular, yes, he's blown many great opportunities throughout his racing career. And I give him credit for taking responsibility for his actions, admitting that he talked too much and he said some things that he probably shouldn't have said. I'm sure he wishes he could take all of those things back, especially referring to a current Formula One driver, Nicholas Latifi, as poo, especially when you're one of Williams' development drivers yourself. And he was actually dropped from Williams' program shortly after that came out. And as I was saying, the real tragedy about Dan Ticktum, he's a very talented race car driver. I have to give him that. Ticktum is super talented and probably has the talent to be in Formula One. He's probably more talented than some of the 20 drivers that we have on the grid right now, but his off the track antics and his immaturity really cost him big time. And I think that's really unfortunate for such a talented race car driver because Ticktum does have the talent. And now looking at Formula One driver development programs as a whole, do you think it does more harm than good to a driver's career?
Well, for me, there's so many great F1 driver developmental programs out there. For me, I gotta say probably about 50-50. I know it's really hard to get into Formula One. I know there's probably some F2 drivers that really thinking I'm better than some of those drivers in Formula One right now. But unfortunately, I'm racing in Formula 2. So, For me, it's 50-50 in that subject. Hopefully we'll see some of these absolutely talented Formula 2 drivers compete in Formula 1 someday.
Yes, maybe they'll make it to Formula One someday. But if not, there's some great options out there. You can have a great career outside of Formula One because you can go race in the NTT IndyCar Series. You can go race in the Formula E World Championship, and you can go race in Sports Car Series as well. The FI World Endurance Championship, the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Also have the European Le Mans Series, GT World Challenge, pick a continent: Asia, Australia, Europe, America. There's a lot out there and opportunities for those drivers to be able to continue their racing career. And like you said, Adam, I think it's really 50-50. I think a lot of it comes down to time. And like take Alpine, for example, they have Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso set for this for at least the next couple of years or so. So the Alpine development drivers, they're probably not going to have a place to go unless Alonso decides to retire, or let's say Lewis Hamilton retires and Mercedes wants to pick up Ocon, and Ocon decides to partner George Russell at Mercedes. Then that's right, really the only way you're going to see a spot open up at that team. So if you're one of their development drivers, probably going to have to look elsewhere. And if you can't find a seat there, your Formula One dream might be over. So I think timing plays a part in it as well. And Adam, if you were a Formula Two driver, would you rather be an academy driver aligned with one of these bigger Formula One teams, or you rather be unaffiliated, not having an academy, hoping that your talent alone will catch a Formula One team's eye?
Well, for me, that's a very hard question, but I think I'd have to be an academy driver. You get some of the resources, from your Formula One counterparts. You could potentially have a Formula One seat, if something were to happen. But Formula 2 is really, really competitive. There's so many great young drivers in that series, and they are on the same, and they go to basically every single race, Formula race weekend that Formula One does. So they're getting a lot of seat time. Plus, who knows what could happen if there was an open seat and you could potentially have a Formula One ride. So for me, I think for me, when it comes to being an academy driver, I would want to be associated with the Formula One driver developmental program.
Yes, being a Formula One Academy driver is probably the best way to maximize your opportunities of being in the sport. And if you're not an Academy driver, I really hope you have millions and millions of dollars ready to go, because you can bring fun into a team. And if you can write the check, they'll be ready to take you on. Next, here's Matt White with his weekly Grid World Motorsport League update.
Hi everybody, Matt White here from the Grid World Motorsport League. Well, what a topsy-turvy weekend of motorsport that was. And it's time for week 29's update for the Grid WML for 2021. The top four have stayed the same, no movement in those positions this week. Timmy Hansen gets his second week on top of the table ahead of his brother Kevin. But they're both in action this weekend as the World Rallycross resumed in Latvia for a double header, so Saturday and Sunday rounds, so that could put a big change on the scoring. Plenty of shuffling going on slightly below those guys, with Alice Powell and Jonathan Ray moving up and Jamie Chadwick moving up, despite not running this weekend because Jason O'Halloran has slipped to 8th in the standings after the crash in the first race of British Superbike at Silverstone at the weekend hampered his scoring, but he still leads the championship, and they have started going into now their version of NASCAR's playoffs. The showdown has begun for BSB. Sébastien Ogier getting a good podium finish in Greece pops him up into 10th in the standings. And as you would have noticed, no Formula 1 drivers for, I think, in a period of eligibility, which is after 3 races. This is the first time we've had no Formula 1 driver representation in the top 10 ever in the almost 3 years now of the Grid World Motorsport League. So a first this week. Another busy weekend to come. More bikes, Superbike back in action. MotoGP continues as well. We've got NASCAR at Bristol as well. So, as I mentioned, World Rallycross in Latvia. So plenty of chances for changes, and Niccolo Marini, our long-time points leader, is also back in action as the ELMS is back for their first race since Le Mans. They're at Spa on Sunday. So our top 3 all in action this weekend, and plenty others besides. So hopefully, potentially, we could see a big shuffle in the standings going into this time next week, when I'll bring you in a further update. Before I go, congratulations to Joe, and what a great weekend we've all had as part of the Grid family after our trip to Portland with Joe at the weekend for the IndyCar race. And what a good race it was there, of course, in action again this weekend at Laguna Seca. So a busy weekend to come, and we'll give you week 30's update on next week's show.
Well said, Matt. Yeah, we definitely have to thank Joe for his awesome, wonderful professional coverage last week at Portland International Raceway for the NTT IndyCar Series race at the Grand Prix of Portland. And we definitely want to remind all of our viewers, if you haven't checked out our content from Portland International Raceway, please check it on our YouTube channel. And for the first time, the Bathurst 1000 will take place at the end of the year in December, with 6 days of on-track action from November 30th to December 5th. Joining the Repco Supercars Championship at Mount Panorama, the Dunlap Super 2 Series, Porsche Carrera Cup, Toyota Gazoo Racing 86 Series, TCR Australia, Touring Car Masters, S5000, GT World Challenge Australia, V8 Super Utes, and Trans Am, almost an entire week filled with racing activity for the fans down under and everybody else around the world to enjoy. We got the announcement recently about the Gold Coast 500 being canceled this year, and we really haven't seen any supercars action for, I believe, almost a couple of months now. Adam, after the motorsports community in Australia endured another difficult year because of the pandemic, will it be a major treat for the racing season to end with a bang like this?
Of course, you got racing every day at one of the greatest tracks in the world, Bathurst. I've got a lot of friends who usually attend the Bathurst 1000 every year. So, I feel so sorry for all the racing fans down under in Australia. Like I said, I got a lot of friends that live there, and they're so disappointed not to see the supercars on track. The drivers miss it, teams miss it, everybody misses it. So with this announcement, it's a really cool way to end this. It's a really cool way to end this 2021 racing season down under in Australia.
This would be really special for the Australian racing fans, especially after the year that they've had. We haven't, like I said, we haven't seen the supercars in a while. I actually had a friend message me the other day and was like, "When was the last time the supercars race?" He was like, I know I've been behind and catching up on races to watch, but I haven't seen super a very long time, and it's really unfortunate with the way the pandemic has disrupted the season. The fans really haven't seen much on track action in a while, and for Bathurst to turn into a motorsports extravaganza, I think that this will certainly be a treat for all of the race fans who have been waiting patiently for this pandemic to improve. And last week, Andre Heimgartner announced his departure from Kelly Grove Racing, and he'll be joining Brad Jones Racing in 2022, with Nick Percat announcing recently that he'll be leaving the team. Where do you think Percat could be headed next year, and do you think Heimgartner made the right move to go to BJR?
I do believe so. Nick Percat said on his Instagram he wanted to thank Brad Jones Racing for everything that they've done with his career. So I believe Andre Heimgartner is a good fit at Brad Jones Racing. I believe he will be a contender for top 5s and top 10s. Maybe a win, but we'll see what happens in 2022.
And prior to the unplanned lengthy break for supercars, Shane Van Gisbergen has completely dominated the season. Nobody's been able to touch SVG in the championship. Sometimes when you have long breaks in racing like this, the drivers can come back a little rusty. And I believe we saw that in Monza with that first sprint race for FIA Formula 2. Been a while since those drivers have raced, and a lot of them really had to knock off the cobwebs. I'm wondering if we're going to see the same in supercars. And when the season resumes, will SVG still dominate, or could the long break lead to some rustiness, leaving a door open for others to challenge him?
I believe when they finally get back on track, who knows when that'll be because of the pandemic down there. I believe SVG will still be really dominant in the series, and right now he's a really good pick to win the championship. But don't penalize teammate Jamie Whincup, Cam Waters, or Chaz Monster, and especially Anton De Pasquale and Will Davison at Dick Johnson Racing.
And next, here's a look at week 25 of the grid ranking. And Sebastian Ogier lost points to the leader, Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen is looking at potentially being the first Repco Supercars Championship racer to win the grid ranking. However, the cancellation of multiple races has really worked out in his favor. Still, you cannot take away from the performance he's had this year, just absolutely dominating the series. Adam, should the grid ranking be updated to penalize the series that do not complete the planned schedule as announced, or is it totally unfair to penalize them for something out of their control?
Me, I believe it's totally unfair. I know we haven't seen supercars, and it seems like forever. But like I said a little while ago, the teams miss all the action, the fans miss all the action. And to me, it's unfair. Hopefully, the pandemic will slow down in Australia, so the supercars teams can get back on track, and the fans can get glued back into the action.
Yes, I think it's unfair as well to penalize the drivers in the grid ranking if the number of races are reduced. I think the system that Joe has in place right now with the grid ranking works out pretty well. I do agree that the cancellation of races certainly helps Shane Van Gisbergen, but unfortunately we can't control what goes on with the pandemic and what the Australian government's protocols are. So I think it's best to leave the grid ranking as it is instead of penalizing those drivers unfairly. Now looking at the full grid ranking, Alex Palou moves up and Joseph Newgarden is 11, just outside the top 10. In 2 weeks' time, the IndyCar season will end and Palou might be the highest scored IndyCar racer. And be sure to follow the grid ranking at Grid Ranking on Twitter all year long. For our new subscribers, the Grid Ranking is the annual ranking of drivers from Formula One, Formula E, IndyCar, MotoGP, the NASCAR Cup Series, Repco Supercars Championship, and World Rally Championship. And we've been doing this since 2017 with 3 different champions. In 2017, Martin Truex Jr. from NASCAR, 2018-19, Marc Marquez from MotoGP, and last year, Lewis Hamilton from Formula One took home the Grid Ranking World Championship. And if you want to know more about the grid ranking or how we come up with it, please visit www.gridranking.com. The link is in the video description below. And once the screen pops up, go over to the third tab over that says Grid Network, and you'll click on Grid Ranking to learn more about it. And you can also find extra information about Matt White's Grid World Motorsport League as well. And with that said, another episode of Grid Tonight is in the books. Please be sure to like and subscribe to Grid Network here on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And we also encourage you to visit our Patreon page and invest with us. Big shout out to Colin, Mark, and Duchelle. And we'll be sure to update the graphics soon. We want to give a warm welcome to our newest Patreon supporter, Robin H. We really appreciate you for taking the time to invest in Grid Network, becoming a Patreon member, number 4. And also be sure to check out Paw Bless. Please consider spoiling your furry friend to have dog leashes, clothing, accessories for dogs of all sizes. 10% of your purchase goes toward helpless, homeless, sick, and rescue dogs. A great cause. Everyone at Grid Network supports. And also public.com, the stock market social media home. The link below and referral code gives you $5 to invest right away. Public.com will allow you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to invest in the stock market. Looking at the schedule ahead, Thursday morning, brand new episode of the Women Racing to Win. Saturday, we're back on the air for a Grid Live pre-race. Sunday, Grid Live wrap-up 90 minutes after the NTT IndyCar Series race at Laguna Seca. For Adam Lemerise, I'm Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.